Yeah.
Okay.
Brian, I abstain from it.
Yeah. When she comes back.
Sure. You want to borrow these? These are the ones we're voting on. Yeah.
Motion was made by Victoria, seconded by Sandy.
Okay.
Tom abstained.
Okay.
And Joel wants to discuss this.
Yeah. I had a question on Strafford MPO Technical Advisory Committee. And yes. And they're identifying the projects as Somersworth, New Hampshire, and Berwick, Maine. And just for a second, if you would, please.
Talk about the Comeau.
Yes.
About the executive committee minutes?
Right, just for a second,
Okay.
as a reference. And I'm noticing that when the projects are identified, it's being identified, and the executive minutes are being identified as Somersworth, Berwick, Maine Bridge. And I'd like to see those identified in the future as the Somersworth, New Hampshire, Berwick, Maine Bridge. And I'm noticing that on the April 19th minutes that we approved back in May, that there is just a mention of just Somersworth, and then it goes on to just and the Berwick, Maine Bridge. And it does this several times throughout the minutes. So I'd like to see a correction to those minutes, that sometime a correction. Thank you.
Okay, well, what I'd be willing to do, Bill, I'm not sure I'm willing to go back to the old ones, but at least in these minutes that we're looking right now, I use my short, at least in my, what I'm quoted here, I'm using the shorthand of Somersworth Bridge.
Yep.
And your preference would be that it use the same terminology, the official terminology that's used.
Yes, that the Technical Advisory Committee is calling the project Somersworth, New Hampshire, Berwick, Maine Bridge. And so any further notes that we have, the project be identified as that. Thank you.
I mean, it's like, you can't change these words right here. This is what
Talking
it
about
says.
any future.
Okay, yeah. That's fine.
So as a friendly amendment, I'll move in terms of as a amendment to the motion to approve the minutes, that every place under 4B where I refer to Somersworth Bridge rehabilitation project.
Last paragraph.
Yeah, it's like the third paragraph down.
See?
It just says Somersworth Bridge rehabilitation project. It should say Somersworth Bridge dash Berwick, Maine Bridge rehabilitation project. Just terminology.
Wow. Okay. I got plenty of time this one. Let's go for it.
All right, so that's a friendly amendment?
That's my friendly amendment.
Okay. Is that it? Discussion? All right. Under the June,
Well, we need to vote.
Oh, we did. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
For the monthly minor revisions, according to my sheets, and there are none for the month of June.
That's correct.
Okay, good. And item 3, for discussion purposes, Strafford Regional Planning Commission. Vision.
Before we move on, last month we did talk about asking questions about the increase in costs, and those questions were going to be passed on to the DOT. So I'm assuming that we haven't heard anything back yet for an explanation. Okay. I just want to make sure we remember. I had questions about a Rochester project, also this one, in terms of the increase in costs. So
I did find out later on, though, that someone was aware of the increase and they already knew about it. It was already accommodated.
okay.
I actually think that's a good question for the policy committee because you're going to be reviewing it and looking to approve amendment number
Okay.
2, and that's primarily about trying to fit things in the fiscally constrained budget and get work done.
I'll try to remember bringing it up later. Thank you.
So we all received our mission, vision, goal review, goals. And
I was wondering whether we might want to do 4 first so that we could
Oh,
spend
okay.
the rest of our time. I didn't realize when we
No.
put the agenda together it might work better that way.
Okay.
That's amenable to the rest of the.
Anyone have any problems jumping down 4? Saving 3 for last. Okay. On the 4A, New Hampshire Rail Authority, New England Rail Coalition.
Well,
Sandy?
There's nothing new in terms of the rail coalition itself, but the state of New Hampshire did have hearings in Nashua, June 6th, I think it was, June 5th or 6th, on accepting the federal funds. I don't know how it went, I haven't heard any results of it, but they expected a good crowd to show up, so.
No?
Go ahead.
All right, moving on to the New Hampshire ARPC committee update. Again.
Actually, their annual meeting of the group is this afternoon, so I will be attending that meeting. One of the things, one of the agenda items is that was discussed by the directors when they got together for a retreat, was sort of what should the focus of the group be, and should it stay the same, or should we make modifications, changes, things of that sort. So that discussion will be initiated today. One of the questions, for example, is the organization has, over the past number of years, at least that I've been involved, has been primarily reactive. When legislation is proposed, you go through, you say, is it something we support, something we don't support, or we need more information. But it's waiting until we see what is all there. Another mode is to try and be proactive. If there are issues that we think are problematic, to contact legislators and see if they'd be willing to submit bills and focus more on that. And there could be other things as well. So I'll be at that meeting this afternoon and should be able to bring back at least some of the gist of some of the discussion on our next meeting.
Where is that being held?
It's in Concord, at the local government center.
Is that correct, with what everything done before?
Not that I'm aware, at least not since I've been involved. It's always been reactive. That doesn't. The other thing to keep in mind is the association tries to focus on issues that have statewide significance that all regional planning commissions are interested in, with the full and total recognition that there are some issues that individual regional planning commissions may want to take positions on that are very specific to their particular area. So, for example, we've not taken action on or taken positions on issues that deal with the I-93 corridor work, things of that sort. If it is specifically related just to that particular area, or if there's something that happens to just be affecting the North Country, there's something there issues up there. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there haven't been some regional planning commissions that have taken that more proactive And
So never as a group.
not as a group in my.
And would it be something that would be geared toward a specific planning topic or legislation, you know, just sort of anticipating a legislative issue?
Well, I don't know. That'll be part of the discussion.
Sure.
I mean, one model that I can imagine would be for the group to say, to people like myself that are the representatives, is to come back to your own regional planning commission and find out whether or not there are any issues that they would like to sort of take the lead on in terms of being proactive. And then if that issue has some statewide interest, then it may be, then the issue might be, let's try to be collaborative to make sure that the sponsors of that legislation are not just from one region, but maybe other. But that's one model that I can imagine that starts on the grassroots and works its way up. So that's my report.
Any questions? Thanks, Ken. Next, the Executive Director's Report. Cynthia?
So we're, we're interviewing 3 applicants for our second intern for the summer, and we've had 2 interviews. Our volunteer, Penny Gallant, is leaving us next week, and we're recruiting for a finance position. I've included the financials for you to look at. I prepared those yesterday. We received a letter from the city of Dover confirming that they're not paying dues. And DOT accepted our fixed cost rate for the next 2 years, and we received our UPWP signed contract. And everything else is pretty much an update, nothing out of the ordinary.
That's it. Any questions, comments? Okay. Other business?
I wanted to bring up and suggest that it might be time to develop a protocol for when we have to terminate employees. Form protocol so that the director knows what's required. The director has the direction, if you will, to make sure that all the information is protected, all the SRPC information is protected. I'm very aware today that employees and computers can create huge problems. So I just wanted to, I don't know that we have had to concern ourselves. Very luckily, we have not had to concern ourselves with those sorts of issues in the past, but I think it's a changing world. I think it's unfortunate, but I think it's something that might be required.
Is there anything in place at all right now?
We did the best we could given our attorney's advice, and we followed that. I can't say anything more.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, it brings up a conflict for me, because we're a political subdivision. So does that mean we have to do different things, I guess, than you would in private industry? I don't know, I think it's a question.
Well, the sort of issue I'm concerned with very, very specifically in any circumstance is that if you're going to terminate somebody, get them away from their computer and don't let them back in your. I'm using that as the,
Right.
and that's, regardless of where you work.
Right.
And that wouldn't have been an issue here, but again, if there's absolutely no direction internally, and it happens so infrequently, some sort of basic checklist on some of these basic things is my concern was, as I say, there have been so many issues with computers, bugs, this whole cybersecurity thing. I wanted to make sure that was addressed somewhere.
Got it.
Who's going to address it?
It would be part of our HR process. And he is a certified HR specialist.
Anything else?
We're doing the best we can. I
Right.
can't say anything else.
No. But what I'm hearing Bob say basically is we we have a situation that says to us, hey, we have to take a look at this and see whether or not it needs to be updated, refined, that kind of thing. And so I don't know whether that, I just want to make sure, I mean, you mentioned it. The question is it simply a matter of when we're through all of this thing, to go back and reevaluate with our attorney to say, you know, is all this stuff set up? Should we set up a subcommittee at some point in time to take a look at this? Should we be looking at best management practices? I just want to know sort of what the next step is. You brought it up. I think we need to take the next step.
Maryland attends monthly meetings of the Seacoast Human Resources Association.
Oh, good.
And this is a topic that comes up regularly. And particularly it comes up because a lot of employers have people who are now working at home.
Okay, so
it's very complicated.
I get that. That's still, my question is, what's our next step?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're following up on that.
okay. So would it make some sense to have that as an agenda item at our next
Yeah,
meeting?
it may take us a little bit longer than that.
That has been a concern.
Yeah.
Stuff going on, special funding.
Yeah.
So we'll come back, maybe give us in September, we'll come back with practices.
I don't have a problem. I just want to make sure we have something.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Again, let's do it right the first time and not panic or by the same token, we should not even before it continue this part.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other business? Hearing none. Jump back to discussion on item 3. Mission, vision, and goal review and discussion.
Yes, so we had started this discussion over the last year, and when the executive directors went on their retreat, we had someone there from the National Association of Development Organizations who's part of their national staff, and this person just happens to live in a suburb of Boston. So they were able to come up and spend a half day with us. And this self-assessment that I've enclosed here was developed by the National Association of Development Organizations, specifically for regional councils, regional planning commissions, MPOs, economic development districts, to do a self-assessment and have some resources to educate themselves on while they're doing the process. So also on our agenda at the retreat was discussion about where do the 9 regional planning commissions in the state of New Hampshire, how do we move forward, both together and separately, mostly looking at how do we move forward together. The second day that we were there in the afternoon, we had a report from 2 of the executive directors in Vermont. And Vermont, I actually, did we bring that copy? I think we left it in my office. Vermont went through this process. They got a grant, and they went through this process together over 18 months, and they evaluated all 11 regional planning commissions, and then they wrote a report, and then since that time, they've been moving forward with some of the recommendations, and individual regional planning commissions have been moving forward with it. So I've looked at this several times since it's been out in '09 and thought that it would be really valuable for us. And so given what happened at the retreat and given where we are in the state of New Hampshire and our discussions over the last several months and year, I thought it would be a good time for us to dedicate a substantial amount of time figuring out over the next year, making this a major topic for how do we move forward and having this discussion here once a month. So that's the premise, and so just to fulfill some of the things that we were asked to do and to follow up on the annual meeting. Excuse me a second. If you go to the inside page after the front cover, which I think Shana did a great job with, and she put this whole packet together for you, so I think she's done an excellent job. It's all got dates on it and paginated so you can, refer to something easily with your fellow committee members. So within this is, the self-assessment is contained in here. And what we thought we could do is we could use this as a basic organizational analysis for us as an executive committee. And one of the points that we'd be discussing is at what point in time would we like to include other people in the survey? How do we involve staff? How do we involve other commissioners, the technical advisory committee, the economic development district? Because in Vermont, all the members of those committees received portions of the evaluation that were most relevant to them. And then we thought it would be fun because you seem to enjoy it and we purchased them. That you can see that on each of these there's sections where there's 5 to 10 questions and they're rated 1 through 5. So we thought we could use the turning technology clickers. And so maybe there's homework where you look at the sections, we're going to be discussion at each meeting, and then sort of indicate where you think we are, and then fill out the questions on each section. There's a bottom section. This is a SWOT analysis. It does strengths, weaknesses, challenges, opportunities, and threats, which is normally called in business and municipal administration a SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So each section has that. I thought, well, we could do our homework ahead of time and then come in and use the clickers and see where we are and have some discussion about that if we have a great diversity of opinion, or if we're all in one boat together, we probably need to talk about that too, and then have a collection of what the comments are. So that's that section, and then we've included right here on the first page, we've included under number 2. We actually have 2 vision statements right now. We have one vision statement that is from the economic development strategy, and we have a second one which is from our regional master plan. And then number 3 here, we have 3 sort of related mission statements. One from the employee handbook. I don't think the date on this mission statement is 06. That's the last time we had a major update of our employee handbook. So that date reflects more when we updated the handbook, because I don't remember updating the mission statement when we did that. Then the next one is from our annual commissioner's handbook. So the last one was in 2012, and I think that we did some updating on this in the early 2000s, as you can see by the language in it. And then the bylaws looks like one of the really original ones, probably from the 80s. And then what I also included were, you had asked for values, and so I thought it was really important to inform the discussion to understand what the employees are given as their values. And so those values are on page 166 through 171. And the first one is expectations for employees. And it says each employee of the commission is expected to perform to his or her highest level and to contribute towards the common good of the organization and our member communities and clients. And then it talks about commitment to public service, personal characteristics of integrity, reliability, respect, fiscal responsibility, quality through seeking excellence and improving professional skills, and being creative and collaborative. And then the next set of values that inform employees, and it may also inform some of our commissioners and people who we work with, is the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct from the American Institute of Certified Planners, and this addresses the areas for certified planners, of which I am one. So your responsibilities to the public, your responsibility to clients and employers, responsibility to the professions and colleagues, and then your own self-responsibility. And finally, again, looking at values and understanding of how we function and what we do and how we do that. I included from the Commissioner's Handbook the role of the Commissioner, which talks about how to participate and be active in this. So that's what I brought forward. Are there any questions at this point? I didn't bring forward the goals that we had worked on at this point because I wasn't sure if that would distract us from the overall looking at mission statement, vision, and values. So I've left that for now, but I'm open to hear when you would like to have it brought back in again and how. All right, so then.
Is it the first time we've ever had talked about this?
Yes, yes. I'm sort of really thrilled to have the opportunity to present this to you and see if you want to do this, because I think we couldn't have a more opportune time to be doing this. Our budget is pretty solid for the next couple of years, and so this really gives us the time to work on this, and I think it's a very good time to do this.
The other, just a couple of comments. One is, there's even a section here for state associations of regional councils, so
Yes.
I'm going to be bringing that up at the meeting today, so this is an opportune time to sort of be aware of that. The other issue is, this is one of those kinds of things where I think, careful what you ask for because you might get it. We said we want to talk about policies and goals, and that they took us seriously, and this is a great example of how it's work to do those kinds of things. You can't just sort of, in a very cavalier way, say, well, this is what our goals are. You really want to be thoughtful about it. And so I guess part of my biggest question is sort of how we, with all the other things that we have going on, how do we implement this? And it would seem to me that there might be a couple of things. One is there's this level, but really what we're talking about is the commissioner level. So that maybe over this next year or year and a half, I'm not sure that this is a 1 year sort of project. This may take 18 months, but to the extent that we have our quarterly meetings, that our quarterly meetings may have as a primary focus. It's always been nice to bring in people from the outside to hear interesting things that are going on. But if this is what our focus is for the next year or 2 years, then maybe primary agenda item for quarterly meetings is to talk about these things and to do the quicker things and find out what's on. And then the last comment from a planning perspective is I always get concerned about going through all the effort to do this and then getting to the end and saying, it's done, and then forgetting about it and moving on to other things. So the one piece that I think we really need to be talking about is after we've gone through all of this, to be thinking at the very beginning, how do we make sure that whatever work we do to come up with this document or this package of information, how do we ensure that it continues to be meaningful? And just sort of take that big sigh and decide to go back to sort of what we've been doing all along. Those are my comments.
I agree, and I think as we're going along, Cynthia, you can kind of clue us in on how it will be relevant and how it will be implemented to keep people motivated and excited. And I really agree that there should be quarterly meetings. It should be a consistent part of what those meetings are about.
So I don't know where it is with the, and I'm glad you're going to bring it up today with the association. I felt that the timing was such that I couldn't not move forward with this, especially seeing that over the last 18 months, we've been having this on again, off again discussion about, well, how are we moving forward and what is our relevancy and where do we go? So I thought waiting for a group to come together, given our funding and our workload, may not be the best thing for us, and that as much as I like to work collaboratively, at times you have to put yourself first. It's sort of like the time on the plane, if you're traveling with a child, you put your own oxygen mask on first and then your child's.
I appreciate what Ken and Victoria said, and conceptually I think I agree. Well, I agree, but I'm not sure the methodology is necessarily correct. I would suggest that perhaps we want to make this for the foreseeable future, i.e. a year and a half, an item on the MPO meetings, because those quarterly meetings are evenings and bringing the public. I would rather see that as a report rather than taking away from the outreach, which I think is a critical piece of those quarterly meetings. That actually gives us more focus and allows us to talk it more often. Again, I'm just sharing ideas about it. But again, what are we really accomplishing with our quarterly meetings? We're doing it at night time so the public can attend.
Correct. But
And I think a lot of that outreach has been tremendously valuable in the information. So I'm a little concerned with losing that continuity. Whereas a report, make this a part of a quarterly report rather than the open session. But again, throwing ideas out.
That's a really good point. I mean, I see this as a way of, I mean, to the extent that the general public may or may not decide to attend our quarterly meetings, that's going to be up to people and depending on what their level of interest is and maybe what the topic is. But that's the time when we gather most of the commissioners together. And so, I'm seeing two valuable things, and I don't know if we have enough time in one meeting to do both. One is that sort of outreach, a way of letting people know what we're doing as an organization. The other is the internal look in terms of how are we doing as an organization, what's the focus and all the rest of it. Maybe another model would be to have 2 half-day retreats or something over this next month and a half, where there's really a much more concerted sort of focus. I don't know what the model is. I agree with you, and I would hate to lose the outreach component.
That really scares me.
That's a good point.
You know, does the public really want to be that involved in our missions and vision statements, as distinct from water quality, what's going on in Great Bay? And the other point that you just pointed out is how much time, or is this something where we want to consider doing an additional 7 meetings directed strictly? I like the idea of the retreats. I think that, and certainly to get this started, I think that's almost a necessity. We're going to do it properly.
But I would hate to see this end up on a shelf like a lot of reports collecting dust. And we did it. Here it is. We should use it.
Yeah, and also engage commissioners, and the key is where, because the MPO meetings, theoretically, we're not really talking about other planning issues, and it's a lot of those issues that really need to be talked about. I think a retreat is a great idea, but there should be follow-up in the quarterly meetings. And frankly, it could be unwieldy, but I think getting public input, at least if there's some structure for it, to give input on this would be very useful. I have a hard time imagining it, but I think it would be very useful. And needed.
Bob's raised a really good point, I think, and that is that, I mean, the other piece we need to be thoughtful about is how we do it so we don't destine ourselves to giving an exercise of frustration.
I think a permanent issue is the annual meeting should review this document. The final document should be that has to go on as a permanent part of the annual meeting agenda. You know, in emergency management, we repeatedly come back to the 5 or 6 key sayings. The plan isn't important. It's the planning process. Emergency management, that is repeated hundreds of times each week all over the country. Yes, you still need the plan, but it's really that process of developing those concepts and contacts. So that's why I say at a bare minimum, once a year, we have to go on record and say, hey, we spent some time. Again, that doesn't guarantee anything will happen. But if you don't institutionalize it, yeah, it sits on a shelf like so many other things.
Cynthia, I'd like to bring on another short piece. This is sort of a model.
Yes.
In terms of your review of this model, in different parts of the country are set up very different ways in terms of what commissions do, what they're called, what their responsibilities are, how they relate to other levels of government and that sort. Was it your general feeling that this model is close enough to what we do that we can sort of, with minor fine-tuning, adapt it? Or do you think this needs a closer look and there may be big sections that are just not applicable to the way things operate in the Northeast?
I'm really happy with it.
Yeah.
Because I finally read something that explains how I do business here, which is very different than a municipality or a state agency. And so this is actually in the first section here that I was hoping we'd have some time to do. And when I read the questions, they made me uncomfortable, which is a really good thing, because I shouldn't be comfortable as executive director. I shouldn't be comfortable doing this process. I should be being pushed and being evaluated in where we are, and seeing that really clearly so that we know what the trade-offs are that we're making. So if we're emphasizing one particular area, then what's the trade-off? And so that gets asked in the questions when you rate yourself. And so when I went through and did that, you know, just to see whether this is going to work for us, it was ouchy at points. And some of them were like, well, I can't see that really happening because the trade-off we made is so entrenched in what we do. But recognizing that trade-off and how entrenched it is really important for us to understand, because it shapes us very significantly. And so one of the things that I noticed in the mission statements and visions that came from the other RPCs was when you look at the one that comes from our commissioner's handbook, is to assure that the region is responsive to the needs of its residents. That's the most direct statement that I read in any of the other 8. You know, so that has the strongest statement there, responsive to the needs of residents through cooperation, and then it goes into all the different details. But that has shaped us significantly in how we do business here. And so I've always wondered why we're different in some ways, and when I read those, it just sort of hit me, oh, that's why we're different. You know, we were set up to be responsive, I mean, very directly. Whereas others say, provide services. Well, being responsive to is different than providing services. So I thought that really distinguishes us as how we function and has significantly shaped us over the last 40 years.
See where you address threats also.
That's part of the SWOT strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We also did that in our economic development strategy. We did that whole process there too. So that is a resource that's available. But If you all don't mind, I'd sort of like to get into a couple of pages here in the beginning so that, you know, we can look at what it is that, if we want to move forward using this tool, you know, how much do you want to bite off?
What page would you like to go to?
I'm on page 4 right now. So, you know, if we could all have a chance to read through how this is set up. It talks about the unique role in public management in paragraph 3. It talks about regional councils are political entities that must function politically, yet also in a nonpartisan manner. And so I've always talked to staff about we're apolitical in a political environment, which I think aptly says that. It talks, I thought it's funny they called executive directors elderly statesmen, and I think they mean elder. In my family, we had this debate about my grandfather, who had a very strong views of himself in the world, and it was like, when could we actually tell him to his face that he was elderly? And when he got over 90, we decided, we all agreed, over 90 for him was elderly. But,
So yeah, notice one thing.
Yes.
In reading some of these things.
Yes.
They refer to, I guess, us as regional councils.
Yes. So there are entities, they're called COGS, for the acronym, they're councils of government, and they're very big in the western and southeastern part of the country. In particular, where county governments are very strong, where county governments have much more enabling authorization given to them by the state. So in most states, county governments have land use enabling legislation. So I worked for a county in California, and we did land use. So we had enforcement and legislative responsibility for all the county lands.
Right, that was sort of the genesis of my question about if you're trying to do one size fits all, something like this, it could be, did somebody have to make so many compromises that it may not be a good fit for what we do? But it sounds like what, at least what I'm hearing from Cynthia, is that whoever put this together sort of took that bigger look, and some of the terminology isn't going to fit exactly the terminology we use, but if the function piece is close enough, then, but that's a really good, I think we're going to find lots of places where terminology, we're going to do a little translation.
So here's an example. On page 24, it says, as executive director, and I think we need to talk about, you know, how we answer these questions, you know, and I think we can do that, you know, as executive, our executive director is engaged with each of the following key sectors. So it says local governments, including county and municipal elected officials, as well as city county managers, program managers, and other career officials. Well, to me, I'm really comfortable with that because it includes municipalities.
So you don't think, I mean, when I saw that, as I was looking through, because almost all of them have a question as executive director.
Yeah.
I saw this as sort of being a document that all it requires you as executive director to answer some questions, if we as commissioners to be answering other
Yeah,
questions.
so I thought there, if we could come to some type of consensus, and my solution for that or suggestion would be, I would answer it directly as written, and you would answer our executive director is engaged in each of the following.
To see how much.
And then that way you're evaluating how you see me functioning, and I'm saying, and then using the clickers, that's a really good discussion point to have, because you can see my evaluation individually, and then we can see what you see as a group. So,
I would see some of the, for instance, we just got through pointing out that as executive director, and then as our, and then I would say that the TAC committee could also answer some of these questions, because this is what they deal with, and commissioners, for the most part, don't TAC brings back their recommendations to the commissioners and to us. And so I think that the TAC could answer these questions better than some of us.
okay. All right, so,
we've got about 12 minutes before the next meeting. And I just want to make sure that we don't sort of get into the weeds here and not think about what direction we want to head comes back. So my feeling would be that we need to have some sort of a discussion or set up a mechanism to have a discussion about how are we going to do this. We talked about a couple of models earlier. There could be other ways of doing it. I don't think it's good for us just to dive in without sort of thinking about what our long-term plan is. My planning camp. So I guess I'm wondering whether or not this is something that all of us ought to sort of look through and come back with some comments at our next meeting, or whether we should set up, if there are 2 or 3 people who would be willing to get together sometime between now and the next meeting, to look through this and come back with some recommendations in terms of what the process might be or something. I think we need to, there's a lot of information and it's interesting stuff. Decide how we're going to approach, if we want to move ahead with it, how we're going to do that.
Sandy, did you want to say something?
No, I want to be careful that it seems to me the policy makers are the folks doing this, not necessarily the subcommittees. I'm gathering information from subcommittees, but I think when you're finally putting your vision and your mission together, it's got to be done by a policy makers, not subcommittees that might be doing the actual work.
I was going to ask if it would be possible and acceptable to the group as a whole to schedule a teleconference sometime in June, or a webinar. I don't know what our technical capabilities are. I think all of us need to review this. Giving it to a few immediately is defeating to me, one of the primary purposes. This group needs to take the responsibility. We don't want to do it, the vote's there, fine.
We got to read this first.
Yeah, you got to read it. Everybody has to read it.
there's only 1 week left. That's my only caution in June. Or 1 working week left.
We can do this sometime in July, before the next,
Okay,
before the next meeting.
Yeah.
And that was just, again, it's been,
Okay.
Ken uses the word model, but I think we need to engage in a formal setting, but not necessarily requiring everybody to have to leave work or do whatever else, and say an hour. I mean, I'm on national conferences regularly, and they're held to an hour. That's it. I think most of us should be able to say between now and, yeah, let me take a quick look. Let me get my calendar up.
Oh, and it's 4th of July too.
Yeah, well, okay, well, so our next executive council is the 19th of July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is it reasonable to say that between the 12th and the 16th, we can schedule a 1-hour teleconference? I'm suggesting, again,
The technology is available,
But it's
and
not
we could do
public.
that, but it won't work because of our public body status.
Yeah.
So, and that's a great example of a wonderful business tool that we really don't have available. to
Why
us.
don't we have, well, let's discuss that a little bit further.
I mean, state law is very clear. For example, if we get together as a group,
But if you publish this as a teleconference with a dial-in number, anybody can attend and listen.
I don't know that our laws have caught up with that technology.
That part I wouldn't know.
But
That
it's
slipped
all
my
online.
mind completely, yeah. Because I see the inherent problem with saying another meeting where you have to drive. I mean, it takes time to get here, time to go back. So there's some challenges there, which means maybe simply be prepared to discuss it. This is the #1 item of the next executive council. I was trying to
Yeah.
move it a little faster, and I lost the right to know. Sorry about that. Not purposely.
But just as an observation. It's a good, there are things that, from a tool standpoint, it would be nice to be able to use that are not available to us because of those kinds of.
But I would turn around and say, you need to bring that up at the meeting today, finding out, are there ways to use webinar and teleconferencing technology
It's still
that are pre-announced? The large issue is how many people are going to participate, but if you go to our USNH standard, or if you look at colleges, Clinton State could do this, I know that, Great Bay might be able to do that. I think it's worth your group taking a look at that. Not that anybody has to use it, but it gives us an opportunity, and for some people, that could be 4 or 5 hours worth of driving, you just saying that.
Yeah, no, I understand.
This is one of the unintended consequences. So we put on the statutes on the books.
So can we say that all members will read the document and any comments forward to Cynthia of the document?
And then I can compile them and make them available. But I just would like a general sense that this looks like something you should at least look at
My
over
two
the
cents.
next month and come back with some type of, yes, you want to, here's how, no, this wouldn't work unless blah, blah, blah. Some way so we get an idea.
I think we should look at this seriously.
I think we don't have a choice, that's my view. And especially seeing this is the most comfortable interview I've read that captures how it is that we do business every day and the constraints we have. They just get it perfectly. And primarily that comes back to that we don't have taxing and bonding authority. You know, we're not regulatory.
Nice document, nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can we write on these?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, those are yours.
All right.
Yeah.
Is this available as a?
It's available as a PDF online. You can get it at NATO, and we can also put it up on a link on our website.
I think that would be a good idea,
Yeah.
because for some of us, it'd be easier to make comments
Yes.
that way and then forward it to you rather than handwriting it. You wouldn't be able to read my handwriting. Anything else?
Oh, I did forget something. I applied for the AMPO, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, got a request for the Transportation Research Board for MPO executive directors who might be interested in serving on various boards, research boards. And Bob's done this several times. And so they had one on preparing a risk management guideline. And it actually is organizationally one of my keen interests. So I put my application in yesterday and they sent it on to the Transportation Research Board. So that would be, they pay for travel and so Bob's done it, and I think you prepare an RFP, a request for proposals or qualifications, and discuss what the topic should be covered. And
Basically, TRP panels define a work product, put it out for bid, and oversee the work. And typically they run a year to 18 months. And those products can be, not in terms of what we as panel members would see or do, but those projects run anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to $1.5 million. And if Cynthia is selected from the panel, she will help write that RFP, and she will oversee the work effort.
yeah, and there won a guidance manual for state DOTs to start incorporating risk asset management. So I think that could be a benefit to everyone. So
Since 2006, we are learning a lot about that in the Northeast.
Something Bob just said that could, in addition to coming back with comments and things of that sort, I would find it interesting for people to come back with their thoughts about time frame. Whether this is doable, whether they think this is doable in a year, 18 months, 2 years. I think it would be good to get a sense of how people feel as though time might.
We'll use the Rochester rezoning model 10 years.
No, we won't.
Okay, if there's anything else, if there's nothing else,
Motion.
a motion to adjourn.
I
Oh,
will put the online in the executive committee section on the web page so that you can find it there.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.